involved in the development of very advanced systems, from the larger honey buell systems that were developed in 1939, 42, and 45 that could carry literally scores of officers, to the Creel system, which was a very small vehicle, to a very large interplanetary electromagnetic spacecraft that was at least on the drawing boards, that had cabins for sleeping. We have a prospect of a vast system that made use of underground facilities for the preparation and launching of these most unique saucer craft that literally baffled the Americans and the British.
The SS, however, had a more audacious plan. There were, at least on paper, plans for a giant Haunebu spaceship with a diameter of over 400 feet. And if the reports are correct, there was even a 230-foot-long Haunebu 3. Just before the end of the Second World War, Department SSE-4 planned to build its own gigantic UFO space station. It was to have been assembled in the old Zeppelin hangars. Its name, the Andromeda Machine. Weights of more than 100 metric tons wouldn't have posed any difficulty to the real gravitational engine.
Where did the inspiration come? If we look back at the history of the ancient Near East, keeping in mind that the German philosophers were some of the best Orientalists, the work of Friedrich Delitzsch, who was one of the foremost Assyriologists. In his book, Bibel und Babel, the study of Babylon and the Bible, we acknowledge a reference to flying spacecraft. We have the same concepts in the Sanskrit traditions of the Vimana. The Germans were clearly well aware throughout the history of some 12 to 6,000 to 3,000 years, depending upon Oriental and Near Eastern history, that these craft did exist, and thus began in the 30s a very intensive effort to try to look at these exotic systems that could cross, as it were, the space barrier and open the window to contact with other worlds. It's this very unique scenario, the contact with other worlds, that is the most important part of the history of the Third Reich. For how does this type of experiment arrive on the scene? That is to say, the genetic experiments. How does this type of experiment arrive on the scene? That is to say, the ability to come up so quickly with such a vast category of different space systems of flight and navigation. How does this system of a global science, that is to say, that gives German experts the ability to make expeditions to Kashmir and to the South Pole, suddenly appear on the scene? Obviously, there are higher connections.
Many expeditions were mounted before and even during the war. Not just in the Near East, but also as far afield as South America, such as this one led by Edmund Kiss. And in the remotest regions of Asia, under the leadership of the famous Swedish explorer Sven Hedin. It was the search for traces of a higher knowledge.
Da war mein Ziel immer die unbekannten Teile von Asien, wo die Karten das verlockende.
My aim was always those unknown parts of Asia, where the maps bore that enticing word unexplored over the white expanses. Such were the areas of Inner Asia and Tibet that I've always sought out. That is to say, I've always had a feeling and a belief that in the middle of the desert, where there was not a soul to be found, and where there were no roads, perhaps there could I discover traces of some ancient civilization.
The Vril Society already had its own audacious plan. They got together around Christmas 1943 for a secret meeting in the German Baltic Sea resort of Kolberg. We don't know exactly what was discussed behind closed doors on that occasion, We do know, however, that one subject was right at the top of the agenda. Operation Aldebaran, on which the mediums Maria and Sigrun divulged new transmedial information. Fragmentary though these transmedial messages are, they nevertheless enable us to form an amazingly clear picture of their meanings. Even maps and landscapes of distant planets have been received by medial communication. The Aldebaran solar system is 68 light-years away from the planet Earth. The magical medial telepathic agencies of the Thule and Friel societies have this to report about it. The sun, Aldebaran, has 2 inhabited planets circling it. The 2 together go to make up the Sumerian Empire. On the 3rd and 4th of January 1944, a meeting is believed to have taken place between Hitler and Himmler. The subject of their discussion, the Friel project, the projection of a huge Friel spaceship through the dimensional channel. In other words, a tunnel that was independent of the speed of light to Aldebaran.
If we look at human history, we see throughout the documents of Sumeria, of Ebla in Syria, even the Old Testament book of Ezekiel, chapter 1, speaks of the wheel within the wheel. So there's very clear evidence of higher and parallel evolution throughout human history. However, it is very clear that the major impact of UFO technology did not occur in 1947 at Roswell, but rather earlier by some 10 to 12 years in the area of Germany. And on the basis of looking at documents and talking with former scientists who worked in Germany during the war, it is clear that many of the officers saw UFOs in the sky over Germany during World War II, and even in the region of Peenemünde, where the first experiments took place, there's clear evidence that there were advanced electronic eyes and ears that were watching very carefully the German scientific developments. Clearly and logically, Germany would be the most unique place for a contact that would be made by higher intelligence, since it was in the leadership of the scientific industry in the 20th century. Clearly, it was the place where some of the best scientific minds were assembled in the world.
Can we really disregard the possibility that there was an alien influence or contact at work at that time? What could this structure, photographed on the Friel testing ground in the autumn of 1943, possibly be? A Friel 7 engine being tested? Possibly. But mightn't it also be a spaceship from Aldebaran?
Now, we know that in the early parts of the war, there were certain factions of the Allied forces that did not believe he had a secret weapon. And it wasn't until the Americans made much emphasis of this that they began to look at it seriously, and indeed did discover that Hitler not only had a secret weapon, he had what we would call today a UFO or spacecraft. He had one already off of the drawing board and flying, and it was capable of 1,200 miles an hour, vertical takeoff, 90-degree changes, and much like a helicopter, and of course was far superior to anything the Allied powers had at that time. Secondly, they knew that he had another craft about to be up and going. It was capable of doing 2,500 miles an hour, which was double the original. And not only did it have the characteristics of the original craft, but it also had a laser weapon aboard it that was capable of penetrating 4 inches of armor. Now, needless to say that that really spooked the Allied forces into making a redemptive attempt against him and bringing him into a state of capitulation.
What then became of all the secret projects carried out during the Third Reich? There are indeed a whole series of explanations. One is that the most important flying saucer, was purposely sent to the bottom of Lake Mondsee in Upper Austria. Another is that they were concealed somewhere in South America and in the Antarctic. And not just that. Some people actually maintain that there is a German UFO base in the Antarctic, and that many were brought there disassembled by submarines. The most bizarre theory originates from the Special Department U-13. German UFOs are said to have traveled back in time as a result of entering a strange space-time discontinuity, where they were then received as the white gods of ancient Sumerian and Babylonian legends. Amazing tales. There is, however, something concrete to go on. Why did the Allies under Admiral Byrd mount an invasion of the Antarctic?
I would like to say that among the many scenarios, of course, was the reality that there were some 30 missing German submarines that came from Baltic port areas at the close of World War II. These submarine systems had the Walter snorkel system, which allowed them to stay under water for weeks at a time. And this advanced technology made the German U-boats some of the finest in the world at that time, as acknowledged by U.S. naval documents. It is conceivable that some of this advanced technology could have been put on the submarines, spirited out, and with the snorkel system could have made for Argentinian ports and even the facilities there in Queen Maanland or Neues Schwabenland. I say this as a strong possibility, having seen the film that was made in 1947 with Admiral Byrd and Admiral Wood. I had the opportunity to actually see portions of this film, and what struck me was the fact that there was a significant military contingent that went down to Antarctica with Admiral Byrd. Why was it necessary to bring some 4,000 soldiers, a battleship, an aircraft carrier, and a support team to go into an area if it was purely a geological/geophysical exploration? Clearly there were other unknown factors there, and it was up to the Americans to see if they could acquire this missing technology. That is one scenario.
After a few days, however, and the loss of an undisclosed number of aircraft, the operation was abruptly terminated. What happened? What mysterious opponent could have repelled the Allied invasion so quickly and decisively? Could it have been the few remaining members of the German armed forces? Or perhaps even aliens from Aldebaran? Admiral Byrd later explained to the press that in the event of another war, the hard facts were that we would have to reckon with an attack from aircraft that could fly from pole to pole.
Later reports indicated that Admiral Byrd was given 8 months and unlimited funding to go in and pull this thing successfully off. But we also know that within 8 weeks he was totally defeated. Now, the supposition at that point was that there was an advanced civilization and technology, most probably alien. There were with the Third Reich and the SS who was in Antarctica, and that those great and developed technologies were used to defeat Admiral Byrd.
Throughout the world, in the ancient manuscripts of lost civilizations, we are confronted over and over again with tales of space-traveling gods who visited our planet to prepare mankind for a new age of knowledge and wisdom that would come about as a consequence of the next evolutionary step. The occult secret societies of the Third Reich knew of these traditions and sought ways to make contact with these space-traveling gods who had first arrived in Babylon all those centuries ago.